Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome to another SOLIDWORKS Model Mania made in Fusion 360. Let's inspect the 2D drawing. Let me zoom in on this view and notice all dimensions are pointing to this point, which is the center point of these two circles. With that in mind, let's start off by creating a circle and this keyway first. I'm going to hit C for circle, and let's sketch on our XZ plane, which is this plane, selecting this. Let's drop the center point at the origin, the diameter to be 22. Let's zoom in and move this dimension outside. Left click and hold, place it here. And for the keyway, I'm going to hit R for rectangle. Let's place our first corner at this intersection. And left click here, hitting escape. Let's define the dimensions, hitting D. Let's select this horizontal line and this horizontal line. Place our dimension here, key in 6. The distance between this line and this point over here is 24.5. And to dimension that, I'm going to select our vertical line. Next, I'm going to right click, and at the bottom, I'm going to select Pick Circle Arc Tangent. And notice, I'm seeing this black X mark. I'm going to left click on this, move down, place our dimension here, key in 24.5. Hitting enter. Next, let's grab our horizontal vertical constraint, and my intent here is to align the midpoint of this vertical line with our origin. I'm going to hold shift, and notice as I hover over the midpoint or the middle of our vertical line, a triangle appears which denotes midpoint. Selecting this, left click, and selecting our origin. It turned into black, meaning it's fully defined. I'm going to hit escape to disable constraints, and I'm going to select this vertical line and turn this into a construction line. In addition, we have the option to break this circle segment and turn this into a construction line as well to have a 1 profile. For personal preference, I prefer having 2. Zooming out, let's create another circle, hitting C, and placing the center point at the origin. Dimension field, active, I'm going to key in 35. Hitting enter, and let's reposition these dimensions. 22 over here, 35 over here. And notice at the right, there's a slot. Notice the center point of that slot is our origin. Let's now head over up to create, head over to slot, and this time we're going to select center point arc slot. Prompted to select the center point of the arc, which is our origin. Left click here. Notice the dimension field is active. I can key in 100 for the radius. Next, we are prompted to enter an angle, which is 30. And for the diameter, it will be 24, half of which is 12. Hitting enter. In addition, the bottom of this arc needs to be aligned horizontally. So let's grab this point, moving this up, same with this point. And before we dimension this slot, I'm going to create 2 lines to define the angle, creating a line from this point going to this point, another line from this point going to this point. Hitting escape, let's turn these 2 lines into a construction line. I'm going to create a window crossing selection to select both of these lines and head over to construction, selecting this. Next, let's now hit D for dimension. Let's dimension these two lines to define the angle between them, which is 30. Let's dimension this arc, selecting this, and let's key in 6, hitting enter. Next, let's offset this slot. I'm going to hit O for offset. Let me pan our sketch to the left. Let's enable chain selection, selecting the slot, moving the slider, and let's key in 6, hitting enter. I want to stay true with our 2D drawing, and notice this arc is dimensioned as 12. So I'm going to select this offset dimension, deleting this, and let's also delete the offset relation. Selecting this, hitting delete. Let's now hit D for dimension, selecting this arc, and let's key in 12. Next, let's create the line here. I'm going to hit L for a line, hovering over the intersection. And from here, I'm going to hold Shift, left click, and slowly moving to the right. So notice, while I'm holding Shift, an inferred tangent constraint appeared. So let me move to our next target arc, hovering over, and when the inferred tangent constraint appears, I'm going to release. In addition, make sure that this line is perfectly horizontal by adding a horizontal constraint. Moving forward, let's add the arc here. I'm going to hit S to grab our shortcuts, typing ARC and selecting 3-point arc. Let's drop our first point at this intersection, moving over to this arc. Let's drop the second point at this intersection. And notice as I go down, I am seeing an inferred tangent constraint. So any of the two will do. Left click, hit escape, and from here, let's apply the tangent constraint that needs to be added between these two arcs. So I'm going to head up, selecting tangent, selecting this arc and this arc. Hitting escape. Let's apply the dimension, hitting D, selecting this arc, and let's key in 175. Hitting enter. Dimension tool still active, and before we offset this arc and this line, let's define the radius of this arc to be 100. Hitting enter. Let's now hit O for offset. In addition, make sure chain selection is disabled. Let me now select this target arc, move the slider down, and to be exact, I'm going to key in 6, hitting enter. Let's hover over this dimension and determine its ID, which is D43. Let's right click, select repeat offset, hover over or select this horizontal line and key in D43. Hitting enter. Let's create the arc here, hitting S once more for shortcuts, typing ARC, selecting 3-point arc. Let's drop our first point at this intersection. Left click here for the second point and left click here. Next, let's add a tangent constraint between this arc and this arc. Selecting tangent, selecting this arc and this arc. Hitting escape. Let's now add the dimension between this circle and this arc, hitting D. And I'm going to right click and select pick circle/arc tangent. Selecting this intersection and this intersection, we're going to move down, place our dimension here, and key in 6. Hitting escape, and let's zoom out. And for the fillets here, we're going to add that once this is turned into 3D. Let's now select Finish Sketch. Moving forward, let's hit E for Extrude. And let's start off by selecting this Profiles. Let's head over to Direction and change this to Symmetric. And for the measurement, let's enable Whole Length. For the distance, we're going to key in 14. Operation, New Body, and selecting OK. Let's reuse our sketch. Let's head over to Sketches and turn on the visibility of Sketch 1. I'm going to hit E for Extrude, and let's select this Profiles. Heading over to Top View. Let's change the direction to Symmetric, measurement to be Whole Length, and for the distance, we're going to key in 16. Once more, Operation Join, selecting OK. And for the final extrusion, let's now hit E once more for Extrude and select this profile. Let's head over to Top View and rotate this counterclockwise. For the direction, let's change this to 2 sides. Next, let's determine which is side 1 or side 2. I'm going to pull this arrow up and notice side 1's distance is updating. In addition, inside this dialog box, we can perform mathematical operations. So for distance, I'm going to key in 16 divided by 2, obviously, which is 8 plus 2. And notice at the left, the total value of side 1 is 10. And with this in mind, let's head over to side 2. The total distance of our cylinder is 30, and I'm going to add minus 10. Operation, Join. Let's now select OK. Heading to Home View. And let's turn off the visibility of Sketch 1. Let's add the fillets. Hitting F for fillet. And let's select this edge and this edge. The value to be 2. Selecting OK. Let's add another fillets. I'm going to hit F for fillet. Let's select this edges. Once more, the value to be 2. Selecting OK. Let's repeat the procedure. Right click, selecting Repeat the Fillet. Let's select this edges. And notice this time, as I key into, Fusion 360 gives us an error. Now this is a difference between Fusion and SOLIDWORKS. Let's try minimizing the value of our fillet. Let's try 1.99. So it still has an error. How about 1.98? And this time it's working. In addition, we can add a group of fillet or a selection set by selecting this plus button. And this time, this edges needs to be 4 millimeters. Selecting OK. And congratulations for completing phase 1. Let's save this into the cloud. I'm going to hit Control S. Feel free to point it on your desired location. I'm going to name this as 01 for phase 1, selecting Save. And for phase 2, I'm going to head over to File and save this as 02. Selecting Save. And notice on our data panel, under our folder, we now have 2 designs, 01 and the copy of that 02, which will be used for phase 2. Moving forward, for phase 2, we will be modifying this feature. Let's start off by heading over to our timeline, particularly sketch 1. With this selected, let's right-click and select Edit Sketch. Recall the dimension D43, which is this, 6. I'm going to double left-click and key in 14 for its new thickness or offset. Hitting Enter. Let's now select Finish Sketch. Notice on our timeline, our fillets have now errors. I prefer suppressing this and creating new fillets instead. And another way of suppressing these fillets is to move our timeline marker right before they were created. So I'm going to move this to the left after Extrude 8. Let's revise the thickness of this feature. Heading over to our first extrusion, selecting this, right-click and select Edit Feature. For our new thickness, it will be 8. Once more, Operation New Body, selecting OK. Let's add the fillets once more, hitting F, selecting this 2 edges, keying in 2, selecting OK. Hit F once more. Let's select all of these edges. Selecting this edge and this edge. Let's key in 2. And notice once more we have an error. For this edge, let me deselect this. Let's select OK. Let's repeat the fillet. I'm going to right-click, selecting Repeat Fillet. Let's select this edges. Let's try keying in 2 once more. And notice we have an error. So let's key in our previous value, which is 1.98 for consistency. Let's add a new selection set by selecting this plus button, selecting this edge, the radius for this fillet to be 4. Inspecting, leaving the defaults, selecting OK. And let's save this to the cloud, hitting Control S and selecting OK. Moving forward, it's time to perform simulations. I'm going to head over to our data panel and let's open our phase 1 design. Closing this. Let's change our workspace, heading over, selecting design, and under here, let's select simulation. The study that we are going to create is a static stress. Selecting this and let's select Create Study. Notice up here we have a pre-check, which is a visual cue if we are finally all set to go solving. Let's head up and notice here the arrangement of materials, constraints, and loads. From this arrangement, let's keep this in mind. As a best practice, let's start defining the materials first, then constraints, and then loads. So let's start off with materials. Selecting this. Notice by default, our material is steel. Let's change this by heading over to Study Materials, selecting this, drop down, and let's search for AISI 1020. In Fusion 360, we have two types, the hot rolled and annealed. For this video, let's assign 1020-107 hot rolled for our two designs. Selecting this and selecting OK. Next, let's define the constraints. Selecting this. And let me remove our current selection. Our target here is this cylindrical face, which needs to be fixed. So we're going to select this face, selecting OK. And finally, head over to Loads. And for the target, it will be this face. And as instructed, we are going to apply a force of 400 newtons. The direction to be normal to this face. Let's now select OK. And notice our pre-check is now a green check mark. With this go signal, let's now select Solve. And notice here we have the option to perform a cloud simulation or local simulation. In this instance, let me use the power of my local machine and let's select Solve. Calculating and complete. So notice the factor of safety. Selecting Close. Once more, our target here is for the factor of safety. In addition, we can select this drop down and view the stress, displacement, reaction force, and the strain of our simulation. The steps that we made here is also the steps that we are going to do in order for us to simulate phase 2. If you have reached this point in the video, I want you to comment down below which of the two, is it phase 1 or phase 2, which has the greatest factor of safety. Thanks for watching and looking forward to see you in Autodesk Community Philippines in Facebook. And also our Fusion 360 community in LinkedIn, which is Fusion 360 Worldwide Users. Also in Facebook once more under Autodesk Fusion 360 User Group Philippines. Happy New Year everyone, and see you in the next SOLIDWORKS Model Mania made in Fusion 360.